Hi there, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show with the greatest cameraman in the business today, Sonny Hersh, and your host, Avi Meyers.
Thank you, Marty. Welcome, everybody, to the Northtown News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hersh, my entire technical crew, and myself. Sonny's dressed to the teeth today. He just underwent some serious FBI training, and he's now eligible to be a member of their 10 Most Wanted list, and we congratulate you, Sonny. Anyway, in the coming weeks, we're going to have people like Alderman Bernie Stone, City Clerk Miguel Davalier, as well as Tony Pareca. And after second segment today will be Amy Zander. Dial us up on the web, ntnm.org. There are over 30,000 shows. That's a lie. As of this morning, 29,982 shows have been watched. But I hope in the next 15 days before this airs that 18 more people will watch and we'll hit that magic 30,000 mark. Somehow I think that's pretty safe. Caps24.org for all your community policing needs. Meet your policeman live and in person and have a dialogue. That's the best way to do things. So many of the blogs, but not all of them, are really, really awful, really untruthful. And not only that, but when you're talking about communicating with through a message board about policing concerns, like one guy just wrote, like, how come there isn't a link on caps24.org to report a murder? I think you should call 911 people. That would be a really good idea. That'd be the best way to do things. Anyway, it is a pleasure to introduce a guest we've never had on the show before, and somebody who's doing something that really fascinates me because, as we all know, the internet really is where it's happening right now in terms of news and all the rest of it. And somebody who's got the first equivalent of a nice newspaper that's got some really, really interesting stuff on it called the Beachwood Reporter is Steve Rhodes. Steve, welcome. How are you?
It's great to be here.
First of all, thank you very much.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. I've spent 20 years in newspapers and magazines before starting this website about 2.5 years ago. As a newspaper magazine reporter, I worked at small papers in Florida and Iowa when I was just starting out and had to pay my dues. And I spent 1.5 years at the Tribune in their residency program. I freelanced for 5 years, mostly doing reporting for the Newsweek Bureau here in Chicago.
Nice.
And then I spent 6 years at Chicago Magazine, where I wrote about politics and media mostly. So I'm a print guy at heart.
Yeah, I'm very much there that way, although I started out in Morris, Illinois, professionally.
Sure.
Big time. Anyway, so why would you, well, first of all, journalism is such a high-paying profession in the first place.
Yes.
But I understand, too, because I started my own paper, Jewish Chicago, about 25 years ago. When I started the paper, I was very proud of myself. I had accumulated assets of close to $100,000. I was working hard. Well, I went into the business end of one newspaper, and interest rates were so high, and I was saving money. That's how it happened. But in the space of 2 short years, I took almost $100,000 in assets. And after I decided I couldn't publish Jewish Chicago Monthly anymore, I had assets of $10,000, liabilities of $160,000, including 4 or 5-figure bank loans.
That's the path I'm on, certainly. Yeah. Only I started at a lower total than you did.
That's not good. And by the way, I was very proud of raising that money, and I've never had anything close to it since. But you know what? The one advantage you have is you don't have to go publish all that newsprint. You don't necessarily have to go deliver.
That's right. I mean, that's one of the great things about the internet. I don't have to find a publisher and pay for newsprint and or have delivery trucks and drivers and that sort of thing. I mean, so as they say in the business school, the barriers to entry are low. I think that's the way they put it.
Well, no, that's good. I mean, anybody can do it, but not everybody can do it successfully. That's a whole different deal.
Well, that's something a lot of people are still trying to figure out.
And I mean artistically as well as financially.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, do you have a staff? Well, first of all, how often do you come out?
Well, we print or post new material every day. I write a column every morning that is a look at what's in the daily papers and some commentary. Some of it's political commentary, some of it's just for fun, and some of it's media criticism. And then we have a couple of...
And sports also.
And sports. And then every day we have new offerings in at least a couple of our sections, which are pretty traditional sections like sports, politics, books, music, TV, that sort of thing. And there's about a dozen contributors right now. It's all volunteer. We don't have money to pay yet, but it's all volunteer. But they've been really committed and turn out really high quality work.
It's very high quality, people. It really is.
And there's about another dozen or so folks kind of around the edges of that. So there's kind of a far flung staff, if you will. We operate via email a lot, and I do it on my laptop. In my modest apartment in Wicker Park, that's Beachwood headquarters, and we put out something that people do seem to enjoy, and that's really satisfying.
Oh, I like it. You've got some really interesting links too, like for instance, a message from our director. It goes right to WKRP.
Yes, WKRP is kind of a mascot of the site. When we launched, we had a little TV box that had a Dr. Johnny Fever spinning a record with a link to an audio message from him, and we started to spin through the different characters, and it just kind of gives people a sense of the tone of the site, though we're quite serious about politics and media criticism and that sort of thing. As much as possible, like to use a sharp, witty sense of humor to get the point across.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, well, by the way, I did love that show very much, and I like Bailey better than Lonnie Anderson.
Absolutely. Who didn't? Yeah, absolutely.
But that was one of the great. The revival of the show wasn't anywhere near as good as the original.
No.
But TV. Well, I'm not going to worry about TV in general. I also noticed you're a Star Trek fan, or there's some Star Trek references too on the front page.
The original Star Trek, I love. I mean, the styrofoam boulders. The sets were great, but they were great stories, really, and great
no question,
characters.
Much more original. By the way, just to tell you, because I want to get to the other stuff, because we're going to run out of time real quick.
Sure.
We have lots of time still, but if you saw the old Outer Limits shows,
I never saw those.
Okay, there's actually an Outer Limits with William Shatner.
No kidding.
And if you ever get a chance to watch the show, it really has the elements that I think that Star Trek was taken from. And while I don't remember the names of the people producing it, they were involved in producing that episode of Outer Limits.
Huh.
And I think that sort of was a pilot of sorts that a few years later became Star Trek.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because you will find a lot of the same names and similar circumstances and all. If I ever see it listed on TV, I'll email you.
Good.
But let's talk about, so how you're getting, what kind of, is your audience growing, I mean, as time goes?
Our audience has grown. For a while, our audience was growing every month, and I haven't looked at the numbers really in a couple of months. Some people might find that hard to believe, but the fact is, if I looked at these numbers all the time, I would drive myself crazy.
It's the same reason I don't have a scale in the house.
Exactly, and it's not that important right now, except when I need to use those numbers for business purposes and pitching investors and or people who are interested in advertising or that sort of thing. But I've found that our numbers, we can make the needle jump simply by when I have enough energy to really promote our work and send the link out to other sites to get incoming links, or to other media outlets to get us some publicity and so on, we see the numbers go up. And so it's the sort of thing where if I did have a staff or a business person, which I hope to have one day, we know that the numbers can just with minimal effort become even larger. But we've had months where we've had as many as 60,000 unique, absolute unique visitors, which is a lot for a website of our site. More typically, we're around the 25,000 range. And it really just depends on, again, how much energy I have to post new material and promote it and get some help doing that.
Now, just so people have a frame of reference, like if you go to somebody's website, now like there's one website in particular I'm thinking of that I'm not going to name, not a very good one, it says it's got 200,000 hits on it. But in theory, it's not unique hits. It could be the same person clicking a zillion times.
Yeah.
And often that sort of thing does happen. I'm familiar with counters.
Hits are something it's not a word people really ought to pay too close attention to, because if you have a story and 2 photos on a page and someone calls that up, that will count for 3 hits. Hits are as many elements that get called up, and so when people throw those numbers around, they're whether they're doing it on purpose or not, they're fooling themselves as to how many actual readers
That's
they
very
have.
true.
So,
and not to mention, if you keep hitting the refresh button waiting for new information.
right, there's that as well.
That could count for, I mean, because I've looked at our numbers from the NTNM website, and somebody might have, like, it's like 120. We don't register it that way. Well, we don't put figures out on that. We don't worry about that. We worry about shows that are watched. And actually, we're really on a real station, so that's how we count things for first. But, so, I mean, the website costs money. I mean, what kind of expenses? So besides, well, first of all, too, how early do you have to get up? If you're reading all the papers and digesting the news, you've got to, like I looked this morning, and I'm a night owl, okay? So I was out celebrating the NBA draft last night. Actually, in my room, I'm getting older. But the Bulls won, and I do want to ask you about the D'Antoni thing.
Sure.
So I like, you know what? I'll ask you right now. I just want to be on the record. He had a really, first of all, one of the things I like very much about you go to really good sources, and people, like, a lot of people think Sam Smith just appeared from the Tribune, and he to me was by far the best NBA writer. But you had direct links to him on your website and used him as a source also for information about the Bulls coaching thing. And he does have the best information going, even though he, in theory, left the Tribune. Now he's with the Sporting News.
That's right.
And by the way, the one thing I do want to say for the record for the general public, I think it's more than just a money issue for why D'Antoni didn't want the Bulls. I think if he's looking at Donnie Walsh, who's maybe one of the very best general managers in the NBA, and he was offended enough by a newcomer to management, like Steve Kerr, talking about a defensive coach, I think he's more the artiste. And he took a look at a guy like Donnie Walsh, who knows completely what he's about, and knows him inside out, and then takes a look at the bumbling Paxson and Reinsdorf, who I like. They're very nice people, but not my favorite general managers. And I think he says, I'm going to go with this person who knows how to build a
Donnie
serious
Walsh
team.
is a known, proven commodity who I think any coach would want to work for. And you can't overlook the fact that even though the Knicks are kind of a mess, it's the Knicks. It's the New York Knicks in New York, and if you make that situation work, you're going to be a superstar. So I think even though it on a basketball level, the Knicks might not be the most attractive job out there, come on, it's the Knicks.
Yeah,
how could you not take that job?
They're looking at dumb serious salaries the next 2 years when LeBron and Dwayne Wade and all the rest of it are going to become available. So I'm with you 100% there. But so how early do you have to get up and start reading to put
well,
that out?
that's the tough part. I've been a night person most of my life, and I'm still 2.5 years in adjusting to being a morning person. When I first started, I was getting up at 4 a.m. because I had this idea that for my daily column to be the most useful, which I thought would be give people an idea of what's in the papers today, and then they can go look at it or not, including some of my own commentary and spin or media criticism. I thought that had to be available to people right away, but I just couldn't. I couldn't manage getting up at 4 a.m, especially when I'm editing everything else on the site and trying to build this into a business and have a lot of other responsibilities. So now I get up generally more around 6, and I think my readers don't seem to mind if they've already read the papers and then they come to me and see what the spin is. Or maybe they haven't read the papers by then, and a lot of people don't even read the papers anymore, and I can just provide a news summary for people. So I tend to get up around 6 these days, and it's still hard. It's still hard, folks.
I went to bed at 4:30 last night.
Oh, I long for those days.
I can't write until after midnight. It's a general rule, but that's me. It's just the way it is. I do want to mention, too, you're getting a lot more media attention. I first saw you on Chicago Tonight, and you're a frequent contributor now on Chicago Tonight and Chicago Week in Review. And you just had a big story, as a matter of fact, in conjunction with Columbia College, my alma mater. I was editor of, it was then the CC Writer, I don't know what it's called anymore, in 74, 75, to date myself.
Yes.
And I was also editorial director of the radio station in those days.
Oh, great.
But that was fun. It was a different era, and the school was only got accredited as I graduated. So, my degree, not that I've ever shown anybody, I guess it's worth something. But so tell us about what you did with the Columbia College students.
Well, we did a joint investigation with Columbia College. They have a citizen journalism site called chicagotalks.org. And we used some of the students from Columbia and jointly published on Beachwood Reporter and Chicago Talks, and also with the help of the Better Government Association and Jay Stewart. We looked at city council committees that often meet without having a quorum and pass business and pass ordinances and conduct business not only without a quorum, but frequently without minutes, without any record of who attended, who testified, and that sort of thing. And so what we did was we sent students over a couple of months to every committee meeting we could get to and documented how frequently this is happening. And it really calls into question the validity and legitimacy of these city council committees, which have huge budgets. Aldermen are paid to attend these meetings and often do not. And frankly, we think it's an outrage. And we just saw that a zoning committee meeting, the Children's Museum issue came up for this zoning committee meeting and was put off because not enough aldermen, supposedly according to the mayor, not enough aldermen were there. Yet they passed a lot of other business at that meeting. So the way that these rules get played around with, it calls into question whether these council actions can be legally challenged, whether laws that have passed have really passed, and but more than anything, that citizens can't go back and find out who voted, how did my alderman vote, who testified, who was present, what was the debate. That it doesn't exist for a lot of these council committees.
I know that with the state, well, to a large extent, even the county to a certain extent, and certainly the federal government and Congress, there's actually a written record, and you can actually look these things up. Now, it really shocks me that they're not doing things by the book in Chicago.
Right.
And, I remember when people would turn off the microphone. I used to cover city council in the mid-'70s. I mean, the old Mayor Daley would just turn off your microphone. If he didn't
now the new Mayor Daley does that. He just did that to Joe Moore in the foie gras debate.
Yeah, just for the record, I want to say I don't think anybody's contributed more to the excess use of foie gras than Joe Moore, even though I happen to like him. One of the things I did want to ask you is just out of curiosity. It always amazes me. I take a look at what's going on in the city, and this is definite corruption that I'm really glad. This is stuff that really ought to be there, and it ought to be, like done properly. But between the city and the county and the state, I'm continually trying to figure out who's more corrupt.
Well, they're all competing to top each other, aren't they? I mean, I think every level of government, if you live in Chicago, city, county, state, every level of your government is being investigated by federal authorities. We've had convictions at every level of government for corruption. We may send a second governor in a row to prison.
Oh, I think it'll happen.
The Daley administration, even fans of Mayor Daley, cannot deny how thoroughly corrupt that administration has been. Just look at the conviction of his patronage director, Robert Sorich, in what was found to be massive fraud in hiring in city government, just one of the most basic things, not to talk about all the contract corruption. And then we look at the Stroger County government. So it's, it's depressing. It's hard to figure out how this can exist.
Well, we have the finest elected officials money can buy. This.
That's right, we do.
I mean, there's an honest one here or there, but not that many.
Not that many.
So, by the way, well, you know what? Let's talk about Beachwood Reporter. We don't have that much time left. So basically, you have a very unique. It's actually kind of lighthearted sometimes. It's very serious. It's very lighthearted. I find it really interesting reading. One of the things I really like, too, is you have these percentages. I guess your staff puts it together. It's like a weekly meter of, like what percentage chance does somebody have of doing this or doing that? Or
yes, the political odds, we call it.
And, you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Well, what it is it's, I'm a big fan of the sports books out in Las Vegas and so on. And I kind of was thinking about, I wish I could design something to actually look like that, only have political odds instead of all the different games and sports. But in the meantime, we just have a text version of that changes almost every week depending on events. And some of them are calculating the odds of, Barack Obama winning the nomination, winning the presidency, fairly straight things like that, although we give a little bit of commentary to try to give hopefully some insight into why we've set the odds where we have. And some of them are a little bit more playful. The chance that Rod Blagojevich will actually flip and testify on himself, which I think is possible because he figures maybe he can save his own skin that way. I mean, I think that 50%, he's just crazy enough to do it. I mean,
he is crazy.
We do that sort of thing too, and we try to mix it up because even the fun stuff really is to make a point, and we don't, hopefully we don't get obnoxious or ranty. We want to be smart with our humor. That sometimes, as I think Jon Stewart and The Onion have shown, that's a good way to make a point.
And actually, I think you succeed very well. It's very nice on a local level that we have something that's humorous and entertaining and very knowledgeable at the same time. Because I do enjoy that stuff a real lot. And I just think the Beachwood Reporter is a great addition to the city, and I hope you can hang in there because, starting something is one of the hardest things.
It's tough.
Is your major expense initially? I don't know what a website. Is it from the website itself, or
the expenses are actually very low. Server fees, hosting fees can be $20, $30, $40 a month. Office expenses and that sort of thing. But I need to make money, one, just to pay my own living expenses, to pay my rent, to pay my bills. I don't have any other source of income. And also to get to a point where we're making enough money to actually pay our writers, hire a tech person, build a staff, build a business organization, and create what we want to do is create a stable of sites. We have ideas for 6 or 8 sites already on the books, and we think a couple of the others will be the real revenue generators. But to get to that point, I need to hang on and hang on with all my might and, try to find investors or find advertising, whatever the different revenue opportunities are.
Well, I want to wish you a lot of luck, and you should definitely read it. The Beachwood Reporter is really interesting, and I think it's very creative and something very different that it serves a real need in this city.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you very much, Steve Rhodes, and thank you for joining us. Stay tuned for segment